Let me ask you a question. Do you ever feel just completely exhausted by the relentless pressure to, optimize your life?
Oh, absolutely. I think pretty much anyone listening to this deep dive right now knows that exact feeling.
Right. It's like this lingering anxiety, that
Yeah.
feeling that you need to upgrade your phone the second a new model drops, or uh, the pressure to biohack your sleep cycle with some new gadget.
Yeah, or curating that flawless personal brand online.
Exactly. It's this constant need to evolve just to keep up with whatever the algorithm demands today. It just feels like an endless, exhausting treadmill.
It really does. And, that treadmill is powered by a very specific assumption,
Yeah.
one that's basically baked into almost every aspect of our society.
Which is what exactly?
Well, we are taught from day one that moving forward, upgrading technology, consuming the latest innovations,
Yeah.
that all of this inherently makes us better. It is essentially the unquestioned religion of the modern age.
But what if we've had the whole concept backward this entire time? What if the smartest, most radical thing you could do isn't to constantly evolve, but to actively, deliberately de-evolve?
That is the big question.
And that brings us to our deep dive today. We are going into some incredibly strange, brilliant territory. I was reading this fascinating cultural column from Monumental Movement Records MMR. It's dated late 2025, and it's a massive retrospective on the 1980s new wave synth pop band Devo.
DVO.
Wow. Yeah. If you are trying to picture them, you probably remember their smash hit Whip It. Or maybe you just remember their iconic uniforms featuring those bizarre, bright red plastic stepped hats, the Energy Dome.
Right, the energy down.
Oh,
And on the surface, if you just glance at old photos of them, DVO looks like this quirky, retro-futuristic art project born out of the 1970s avant-garde scene.
mhm.
They look like a visual punchline.
A total visual punchline. But our mission today is to show you how that punchline was actually a Trojan horse.
I love that description.
We are going to uncover how this seemingly bizarre pop culture artifact from the 70s successfully predicted our modern algorithmic society, the whole influencer economy, and the specific technological anxieties you and I are living through right now. So strap in, because it is a wild intellectual ride.
It really is. And to really grasp the magnitude of what they predicted, we kind of have to start at the genesis of the band's core philosophy.
Right, like why did they do this?
Exactly. We need to examine why two college students would feel compelled to create such aggressively strange art in the first place. The backdrop is super crucial here. Picture America in the late 1960s and early 1970s.
Okay, so you have a country in deep, deep turmoil. The Vietnam War is being broadcast right into living rooms every single night.
Yeah, and environmental pollution is becoming visibly catastrophic. We are talking about rivers literally catching on fire.
Wait, literally catching on fire.
Literally. The Cuyahoga River in Ohio caught fire multiple times. And alongside all of this, you have this runaway, unchecked culture of mass consumerism just booming.
It's a bleak picture.
Very bleak.
Hmm.
And right in the center of that chaos, you have Mark Mothersbaugh and Gerald Casale. They are art and politics students attending university in Akron, Ohio.
The absolute heart of the decaying Rust Belt.
Exactly. So they are observing this grim landscape of deindustrialization, war, mindless consumption, and looking at the evidence around them, they arrived at a really profound, deeply cynical conclusion
Which was?
that humanity wasn't evolving towards some grand utopian future. We were regressing.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because understanding this point unlocks everything DVO ever did. Mothersbaugh and Casale realized that religious progressivism, that faith that we are marching toward a spiritual paradise and technology worship, are just variations of the exact same illusion.
They're two sides of the same coin.
Right. And to put this in a way that makes sense today, think about the last time you downloaded a major software update on your phone.
Oh, I know where this is going.
You clicked install because the company promised the device would be faster, smarter, more evolved.
Right.
But what actually happens? The battery immediately starts draining twice as fast, your older apps crash, and the interface just becomes clunky.
Yeah, it's terrible.
You are forced into a technological upgrade that functionally operates as a total downgrade.
That is a phenomenal analogy.
Yeah.
You are promised evolution, but the reality you actually experience is regression. And that observation became their entire identity. I mean, the name DVO is literally just short for de-evolution.
Wow, I actually didn't know that.
Wow.
DVO is de-evolution.
Yep. They started using this anti-establishment slogan that functioned almost like a dark blessing or maybe a curse. They would just say, we're all DVO.
Or all DVO.
Yeah. It was their way of saying, look, we are all devolving together, so we might as well just admit it. They weren't forming a traditional rock band to sing about teenage romance. They were formulating a heavy academic critique of societal collapse masquerading as progress.
But the leap from heavy academic critique to global pop phenomenon, that is what completely blows my mind. Because art students having radical philosophies in Ohio is one thing, but how on earth did a thesis on societal regression end up on the global stage playing on mainstream television?
Well, they managed that leap because they never operated like a standard garage band. From day one, Devo was a multimedia project.
Right, long before MTV even existed.
Decades before, they were utilizing handmade experimental videos, they were projecting slides during their live performances, and incorporating all this theatrical performance art.
They really understood that to critique a visual consumerist culture, you had to build a fully realized visual world of your own.
Exactly. And the MMR column actually points to 1976 as the major catalyst for them. Devo created an experimental short film titled The Truth About De-Evolution.
And this was essentially a surreal documentary of American decadence, completely framed through their bizarre artistic lens, right?
That's right. And it was highly effective. It ended up winning an award at the Ann Arbor Film Festival in 1977.
Which is a pretty big deal for underground art.
Huge deal. That festival win was the spark that lit the powder keg. The film began circulating in underground artistic circles until it caught the attention of two of the biggest musical icons on the planet at the time, David Bowie and Iggy Pop.
Just imagine that scenario for a moment. You are an underground collective in Ohio wearing strange outfits, and suddenly Ziggy Stardust is actively championing your art.
I mean, it sounds like fiction. But Bowie's fascination makes perfect sense when you look at his own career at that time. He was shedding his glam rock persona and moving into his cold, experimental Berlin era.
Oh, right, the Berlin trilogy.
Exactly. He was actively looking for art that deconstructed traditional rock and roll. And DVO was the ultimate deconstruction. His and Iggy Pop's vocal endorsement directly opened the doors to a major record contract with Warner Bros.
Wow.
Which then led to their 1978 debut album, famously produced by Brian Eno, by the way. And it was titled Q, Are We Not Men? A, We Are DVO.
What's fascinating here is how incredibly rare it is for a high-concept, anti-establishment art project to successfully infiltrate massive mainstream commercial infrastructure like Warner Bros.
It almost never happens.
Right. They didn't just get a record deal. They essentially smuggled a radical philosophical critique right into the belly of the corporate music industry.
They absolutely infiltrated the machine, and that commercial infiltration totally set the stage for their most audacious move.
Yeah.
Because by 1980, they released the album Freedom of Choice, and this is the exact moment they debut their most famous visual icon.
The Energy Dome.
The Energy Dome.
If you have ever seen a picture of Divio, you're picturing this specific hat. It looks like ancient architecture, almost like an Incan-stepped pyramid or a ziggurat, but it is made out of this cheap-looking, bright red, vacuum-formed plastic.
Yes, and the physical design of that dome was incredibly intentional. Mark Mothersbaugh later explained the pseudoscientific lore behind it. He claimed, and I'm quoting here, it was designed according to ancient energy principles. It recycles the energy that escapes from the top of your head.
Wait, I have to pause and push back on this.
Go for it.
Recycling energy from the top of your head, let's be real for a second. Isn't this just a brilliant, nonsensical merchandising hustle?
How do you mean?
Well, they are on a major corporate label. They clearly need a memorable visual gimmick to stand out on TV, so they invent a catchy sci-fi backstory to just sell cheap plastic hats to teenagers.
You are hitting on the exact genius of the project. Calling it a merchandising hustle is entirely accurate, and DVO would likely applaud you for seeing it exactly that way.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Art historians actually refer to this specific tactic as the anti-capitalist brand paradox.
Okay, you need to explain the anti-capitalist brand paradox for anyone who hasn't heard that term.
Basically, it is the practice of intentionally turning yourself into a corporate brand to satirize corporate society from the inside.
Oh, wow, so they leaned into it.
They leaned all the way in. DVO trademarked logos, they coined catchphrases, and they mass-produced merchandise like the Energy Dome. But they were using the very tools of capitalism to mock capitalism. They actually referred to the dome as a humor device.
A humor device. That's brilliant.
Right. To DVO, technology wasn't some grand tool for human domination or utopian progress. It was just something to be recycled, mocked, and redefined. By selling the listener a piece of plastic to quote-unquote, recycle your brain energy. They were actively making fun of the consumer's blind willingness to buy absolutely anything as long as it's packaged as a technological upgrade.
So they were operating as a postmodern art collective masquerading as a pop band.
Exactly.
That is a phenomenal inside joke played on the entire global market. But I guess my next question is, how does a band translate an anti-capitalist paradox into something you can actually dance to? Because the music itself was really highly unusual for the time.
It was. And they achieved it through a relentless, obsessive DIY approach to their instruments. You see, Devo had no interest in sounding like the bloated, blues-based commercial rock bands of the 1970s.
Right. No long guitar solos for them.
None. They wanted to sound like the mechanical society they were critiquing, so they started physically modifying Roland and ARP synthesizers.
Like opening them up and messing with the wiring.
Literally hot wiring the electronics to create these proto-techno repetitive synthetic loops. They fundamentally altered the hardware of the music industry to forge a sound that felt clinical, robotic, and just totally detached.
And in doing so, they laid the crucial groundwork for the indie and lo-fi electronic movements that followed decades later.
Without a doubt.
That clinical mechanical sound is what birthed their 1980s smash hit, Whip It. And if you are listening to us right now, you know this song, you have heard that driving synthesizer bass line. It is undeniably infectiously catchy.
It gets stuck in your head instantly.
It does, and the irony is that the general public completely misunderstood what they were dancing to. People bought the record thinking it was just a funny, slightly weird novelty track.
Oh, totally. The public consumed the catchy rhythm, but entirely missed the teeth of the lyrics. Whip. It was actually a biting parody of the classic American anti-hero and the whole bootstrap mentality.
Like the idea of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps.
Exactly. It was a direct critique of media manipulation, mocking the relentless societal messaging that tells working-class people they can just fix the world themselves if they just work harder, if they just whip it into shape.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The mainstream media enthusiastically consumed and promoted a song that was actively making fun of mainstream media manipulation.
It's the ultimate irony.
Devo managed to aestheticize irony. They took these cold, synthesized sounds and packaged them into a flawless pop format that radio stations just couldn't resist playing.
It actually shares a lot of DNA with Andy Warhol's approach to repetitive aesthetics. You know how Warhol painted dozens of identical Campbell's soup cans to make a cynical point about mass production?
Yeah, and then wealthy collectors bought them as high art.
Right. Devo did the exact same thing, but with music. They put on identical plastic hats, moved on stage like defective robots, sang about human regression, and the public turned them into MTV superstars. The medium literally became the critique.
Speaking of moving like robots, their visual legacy is just as important as the music. The robotic choreography in the Whip It video wasn't a one-off gimmick. It was a highly calculated contrast to what other musical rebels were doing at that exact moment in history.
Oh, the contrast is stark.
Think about the late 70s and early 80s. You have the punk movement just exploding.
Right. And look at how the punk scene expressed its rebellion. It was overt, it was chaotic, and aggressive. Punks used safety pins, torn leather jackets, spiked hair, and screaming vocals to show their complete disdain for the system.
But the problem with chaotic rebellion is that capitalism easily absorbs it. I mean, a punk rocker rips their jeans in 1977 to fight the system, and by 1980, the local mall is selling pre-ripped jeans at a massive markup. It just gets commodified.
Exactly. The system eats rebellion for breakfast.
So Devo went the complete opposite direction. While the punks tried to look as unruly as possible, Devo showed up on stage in matching, meticulously ironed, futuristic corporate uniforms. They were wearing identical red energy domes and moving in total robotic synchronization.
And they chose that aesthetic because they understood a deeply profound psychological paradox, which is acting obedient is the most radical resistance.
Just think about that for a second. Acting obedient as a form of resistance.
It's powerful, right? Imagine a totalitarian boss yelling at an employee. Yelling back is expected. It's built into the dynamic. But if the employee rigidly salutes the boss like a mindless soldier, the obedience becomes deeply mocking. It is much, much more unsettling.
That makes total sense.
Devo's philosophy was essentially, if society wants you to be a mindless consumer, a disposable cog in the technological machine, fine, we will be the ultimate flawless cogs. They parodied obedience to capital and tech so perfectly that they completely deconstructed it.
By acting like perfectly obedient robots, they held up a horrifying, unco-optable mirror to the audience.
Exactly. You can't commodify someone who is already pretending to be a commodity.
Wow. And the MMR source text highlights how that visual DNA, that performative obedience, really rippled through the decades. DVO pioneered an editing style in their videos featuring fast forwards, reverse motion, and hyper artificial movements.
Yeah, it was almost a post-anime aesthetic before anime was even mainstream in the West.
Right. And you can trace a direct, undeniable line from DVO's identical uniforms and robotic personas to the pioneers of electronic music. Kraftwerk leaned heavily into the man-machine concept. The robotic helmets of Daft Punk owe a massive debt to the Energy Dome.
Oh, for sure. You also see their influence heavily in modern Japanese acts, like Detroit Metal City or the techno-pop group Perfume. They laid the foundation for the entire modern culture of anonymous, heavily branded artists.
Which brings up an obvious question. I always assumed that as the MTV era shifted in the late 80s, DVO kind of just faded away because the public simply got tired of the joke. The gimmick ran its course. But the MMR column from 2025 argues something very different, doesn't it?
It does. It argues that the joke didn't end. The rest of the world simply caught up to the punchline.
I love that.
As the 1990s transitioned into the new millennium, cultural critics began heavily reevaluating DVO. They realized these guys from Ohio were actually internet pioneers operating way before the internet even existed.
Because of the branding.
Yes, their self-satirizing brand strategy, the logos, the fake corporate synergy, it perfectly predicted the Web 2.0 era.
They essentially predicted the entire influencer economy. The modern reality where human beings willingly turn their own lives, their own morning routines, into corporate brands to be consumed by strangers online. Devo saw self-commodification coming 40 years early.
And the crazy thing is they never stopped critiquing it. They didn't just settle into being a nostalgia act playing state fairs. In 2010, they released a comeback album titled Something for Everybody.
And the whole launch strategy for that was wild, right?
Completely wild. The entire launch was a direct satire of algorithmic democracy. They used focus groups and data tracking to let the internet choose the songs, the album cover, and even the band's uniform colors for the tour.
They just let the data decide everything.
Yeah, they were actively highlighting how our choices on the internet are actually just data points being fed back to us by corporations.
It's so brilliant. They've stayed relentlessly relevant. Even in the 2020s, they actively updated their theory of de-evolution to critique the rise of NFTs and artificial intelligence.
They never missed a beat.
And when the COVID pandemic hit, they didn't just post encouraging messages online. They actually started selling their signature energy domes with built-in functional face shields attached to the brim.
I remember seeing those. It is both hilarious and entirely consistent with their philosophy. And as the MMR article notes, in 2025, they released a new version of the Energy Dome manufactured entirely from recycled materials.
Which brings their entire journey full circle.
It really does. It ties right back to the environmental anxieties about pollution that first inspired them in the 1970s. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the Energy Dome was never really just a plastic hat.
Oh, was it then?
It functions as a recurring social device. It transforms and reappears in every era, constantly showing up to mock whatever new illusion of progress society is obsessed with at the time. Whether it was 1980s corporate greed, 2010's algorithmic data tracking, or 2020's AI optimization, the dome is there.
It's like a bright red reminder that despite our fancy new tools, human nature is still just devolving. So, what does this all mean? When you strip away the synthesizers and the weird videos, DVO wasn't just a quirky band. They were deeply insightful philosophers offering us a brilliant survival toolkit for navigating a hyper-capitalist, tech-obsessed world. There is a specific lyric from their 1980 album that captures this perfectly. They sang, "Freedom of choice is what you got. Freedom from choice is what you want."
Freedom from choice. That is the ultimate relief they are offering. We live under the crushing weight of endless choices, which brand to buy, how to optimize our schedule, what exact persona to project online.
It's exhausting.
It is. The Energy Dome is a symbol for reclaiming the freedom to simply not participate, the freedom to stop playing the relentless game of self-improvement.
And that leaves us with something really important for you to think about as you go through your day. If you look at our modern obsession with AI efficiency, the exhausting endless scrolling, and the constant need to brand your own life, it looks exactly like the toxic forced evolution that DVO was warning us about half a century ago.
They called it perfectly.
So maybe the most rebellious punk rock thing you can do tomorrow isn't to work harder. It isn't to buy a new app to optimize your workflow. Maybe true rebellion is actively choosing a moment of deliberate de-evolution, to step completely off the treadmill of progress, even just for an hour, to reclaim your raw, messy, unoptimized humanity. What does your invisible energy dome look like?